Good morning. My name's Suzanne McAllister, and I'm an organizer with the Vegan Spirituality Group of Philadelphia. Our basic tenet is that we experience and treat our veganism as a spiritual path. And today I'm going to be interviewing Ann Piotrowski, who is the founder and manager, I was trying to think of a good word, of Conversations with a Friendly Vegan. Ann and I met, I would say, what is it, like 4 or 5 years ago, I think, Ann, where we were tabling at a peace fair. I was tabling with Vegan Spirituality, and Ann was introducing her Conversations with a Friendly Vegan. And I was just immediately struck just by this idea. It was so welcoming, Conversations with a Friendly Vegan. And I thought, what a great idea. If she said nothing else, I was just struck by that. In any case, I did have a conversation with a friendly vegan, and we have continued to collaborate over the last 4 or 5 years. And I, for one, am just so grateful that I met you, Ann, and I love what you're doing. So I'd like to start out by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to veganism.
Okay, well, first, thank you. And right back at you, that I'm so grateful to have met you as well that day at the Peace Fair. So I've been vegan since 2012, and it started with that it was December 2012, which is when the Newtown school shooting occurred. And you know, we as a country, maybe as a world, had kind of, you know, school shootings and mass shootings had kind of happened before, but this was different. This was, you know, children in an elementary school, and it was just so intense. My daughter, I have a daughter, Gracie. She was in the 1st grade at that time. Oh, so she was the same age as these kids. So that's all. That's just to say that my emotional state at that time, which I was not alone for sure, kind of we were all grieving as a country. And it so happened that at the same time, I was reading a book that I thought was about weight loss, and it was, but it was about veganism as well. It's called Skinny Bitch.
Oh, I remember it. It was really funny. And
yes,
no holds barred.
No holds barred. And, you know, I picked it up just not knowing it was about being vegan or a plant-based diet at all. I just saw, I thought the title was kind of funny. It was at a book sale at my local library, 25 cents. So I'm like, sure, I want to lose a few pounds. So there's the where my head was, right? So here there's this deep grief and awakening of sorts that was happening through this intensity, and I felt it important to lose a few pounds. I don't know, like it was just kind of this, you know, we're complicated, right? Humans are just complicated. So it really, what happened, to make a long story short, is what happened was that it very much clarified for me that compassion, nonviolence, kindness, love, these are my top values. Mm-hmm. These are my top priorities. These are my mission in life, is to try to live in a way that reflects those values. So I guess what I could say changed me, because I think those values were always in me. I think what changed is that I made a conscious choice to take them seriously. When I did that,
can you say a little bit what you mean by that?
Yeah. So what I mean by that is that I was always feeling like I was a good person, a kind person, always wanted to help, and would never have said that I was somebody who would harm anyone or harm animals. But when I truly was honest with myself, I realized that I was not living by those stated values. I was, more recently, what I've started to think of it as, I had all the compassion, but I was stingy with it for not great reason. So, maybe this is part of what happens to people during certain periods of life. Some people call it like a midlife crisis. I call it a midlife awakening because that feels better to me.
Mhm.
So when I really started to say, what matters in this life, in this world, what is important, what legacy do I want to leave for even my daughter? All of this came together in my mind, and in my heart, I felt strongly. What the book did was tell me with great clarity that it was possible, that we did not require any nutrients to thrive. We did not require that from animals, that all of that can be acquired through plants. So it gave me that. And once I knew that, and I had this emotional part of it, it absolutely made perfect sense to me that I should be vegan.
I have a question. Had you ever thought about veganism or vegetarianism for yourself, or was it completely new when you read that book and realized, oh, I can have a complete nutritious diet without meat and dairy?
I was vegetarian. So
Okay.
I was already vegetarian. I had been vegetarian for I don't know how many years, but for quite a while. Like many people, I went from omnivore to pescatarian to vegetarian. I never, until 2012, until that point, I had never considered that veganism was a thing for me. I was a happy vegetarian. I was fine with it. Not knowing certain things, I was fine with it. And then when I learned other things, I could no longer be okay with that.
And what had prompted you to become vegetarian?
It was a time in my life. It was probably also based in the same kinds of that compassion source, in us. I think we all have it. I think it's in there. There's this reservoir, but we either are drawing from it or not. And I was a younger adult, and I wasn't getting more and more into yoga, and the yoga instructor had kind of raised the issue of there's ahimsa, which is this concept in yoga. I was learning about that. I was learning more about myself, and I just thought, well, this makes sense. Why not? I'll try it. The only reason I was pescatarian before vegetarian was that I loved sushi, and I just didn't want to give up sushi.
Yeah.
So now I still eat sushi.
We all have our red lines where we don't want to go.
Yeah, and that's where I was at that time. I'm not writing it off or excusing it. It's just more of like, that's where my head was at that time. And now I still eat sushi, but I eat avocado and vegetable sushi, which is amazing. So
yes.
That's what had prompted me to go pescatarian. And then it was the sushi, and I also had a boyfriend at the time who was very resistant. So therein started kind of maybe an inkling of where I ended up now with Conversations with a Friendly Vegan, because it was that first resistance to a major change that I wanted to make in my life. There was some resistance from the people in my life. So there was.
Well, that was going to be my next question, which is, how did you come up with the idea for Conversations?
Yeah. So the way I came up with that idea is through my social experiences. So I think because my vegan path started with a book about vegan nutrition, I I never had a great concern about, oh, I won't be able to meet my nutritional requirements. That seemed pretty clear early on that was not going to be an issue. I ultimately ended up getting a certification in plant-based nutrition through Cornell.
Mm-hmm.
They had this great online course, and I did that just to solidify my knowledge, and especially since I'm the person in our home who's responsible for feeding the family, I wanted to make sure that I was moving forward in a conscious way and understanding what all the requirements were. So I was prepared for that, pretty well prepared. There was a learning curve, but I was pretty well prepared. I wasn't so prepared for the social aspects. Maybe I should have been. It was maybe a bit naive of me, but the resistance to it, I felt really, this is probably one of the most, not probably, going vegan is in the top 5 most important, relevant, deep decisions I've ever made in my life. It's up there with getting married, going to graduate school, having a child. It's very, very important to me, and it's very life altering. Mm-hmm. In a positive way. And when you experience stuff like that, when there's these deep shifts in your consciousness or big changes in your life, it is pretty natural to want to share that with people. I wasn't coming from a place that was, I'm vegan, now you have to be vegan too, I'm not setting out to be obnoxious or try and make people feel bad for what they're doing. I was just sharing something about myself, and I really wasn't prepared for the pushback. Mm-hmm.
So you weren't setting out to proselytize.
No, not really.
But you were just saying it would be like saying, I've got a new job, or
yes,
a new relationship, or I'm a new mother. This was like a fundamentally important, positive thing in your life, and you were sharing it.
Absolutely. I was excited. I was excited about, I didn't have all the answers. I still don't, but I have a lot more of them now, but I didn't have all the answers about, everything, nutrition or whatever else, whatever all the topics that we can think about when we think about veganism. I hadn't considered a lot of things, but I knew what I needed to know. And I was very excited about it. And I wasn't really prepared for the reactions. So I would respond in usually one of 2 ways. At the beginning, it was more the first way of keeping quiet. Mm-hmm. I would just keep my mouth shut a lot of the time, wouldn't talk about it, would kind of at family gatherings or whatever, would quietly kind of get whatever food there was for me that I could eat and not draw attention to myself. And that felt awful. It didn't feel good at all. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel authentic. Part of becoming vegan was really a transformation to become more authentic, more honest, more myself. Like I said earlier, when I realized that all that reservoir of compassion was in me, and I think it's in all of us, I was just not reflecting it in my day-to-day behavior. And I was learning how to do that, how to not be so stingy with my compassion, how to use it and let it out.
So I'm just going to interject for a moment, because I think what you said was really interesting in the paradox of, as you said, becoming vegan, I was becoming more authentic. And yet when I experienced the resistance, I started to keep my mouth shut. So it's like, okay, here I am, I want to be authentic, and I didn't expect this resistance, and I'm zipping my lip. Right. And then you had to deal with, how do I become authentic even in the midst of resistance? That's
it. It was me being quiet was not authentic. That was not me. That was me hiding. That was, what I call it now is, it was and light. So I was kind of.
I love that.
Yeah, I was kind of like the dimmed down diet version of myself, the kind of,
Yeah.
let me just turn down my own volume or my own sense of self, let me turn that down to a level that other people can find acceptable. So that didn't feel good. So that wasn't working. So I said, I kind of started to read everything I could read about anytime somebody challenged me on something about veganism, whatever the topic was, I would just do this deep dive and just try to learn everything I could learn. And then I would feel prepared to talk about these topics. I wouldn't feel so shut down. I would feel like I could talk about them. But then it was kind of like I overcompensated, because then what it felt like is that I was arming myself with information so that I could go and fight. And, fighting really isn't my authentic self either. Being combative or arguing or even debating didn't feel like the way I wanted to live my life or the way I wanted to be in relationships with others. It's not the way I really choose to connect with the people in my life. So that's how, that's a long route around to telling you how Conversations with a Friendly Vegan developed. From those two inauthentic places that felt wrong, I felt that there had to be a better way. There had to be a different way of doing it. I took, my background is in counseling, so I have a master's degree in counseling. I did clinical for 10 years before I became a stay-at-home mom, and then I've been volunteering. So between my master's degree and then the 20-something years of attention to it, I have that background. I took that along with an interest in mindfulness, but that comes from that yoga mindset that I've been doing for so many years. And philosophy, just ethics and how people come to ethical decision-making, what all comes into play. I kind of took from all of these fields and developed a way of connecting with people where I can be my authentic self. I can really come with not Anne light, but full on Anne. And I think when you and I met at that Peace Fair, when you asked me about it, which was really one of the first times I found myself having to really articulate what it was all about, I said, I just want to be me in public. So I was me at home in private, but I wanted to be able to be me in public. And that is me with some background, some knowledge, some expertise, but also some flaws, some blind spots, things I didn't understand, didn't see, wasn't willing to see, my own biases and stuff. I wanted to come to the world and to family gatherings and friend gatherings and everything with that, and be able to connect with people in an honest, real way, learn from them, so that I can't find my own blind spots. I need people in my life who can help me, but I have to be open to seeing them when they're pointed out to me, and that is hard to do.
Well,
that is hard to do.
I'm struck. Talk about going from Anne Light to really putting yourself out there. So arriving at at a fair and sitting at a table, and it's not like you're selling merchandise, and it's not like there's a lot of hoopla. I'll just tell people it's Anne sitting at a table with a little flyer that's in a frame that basically says, how would you like to have a conversation with a friendly vegan? And then you have a few brochures, I think, and that's it.
That's it.
So it's you.
That's it.
It's just you out there. So
and that's exactly, it.
To me,
that's it.
Putting myself in your shoes, and I have been in your shoes in many, many ways and many situations, the fact that you transformed from keeping quiet, dimming yourself down, to doing what you do, speaking as a psychologist, I can say that's a pretty dramatic transformation. So there was the transformation to becoming a vegan, but then it's how you are as a vegan, as a human being who happens to be a vegan, is it's dramatic.
It was huge for me. It was dramatic and it took time. And that's what I realized, is that I realized that wasn't alone in that struggle. I wasn't, it wasn't just me. Other vegans might be experiencing this and might be dimming themselves down or feeling like they're, always ostracized, or in some sense kind of left out in social things, even if it's subtle. So you can be there physically and still feel left out. And I wanted to, so from that table of wanting to engage non-vegans mostly in conversation, in a non-judgmental, no agenda, just talk, let's just have a conversation. I'll be honest with you, you be honest with me, you could tell me what you think about it, and I can tell you a perspective that I've gained. I wanted to eventually extend that to helping vegan people have these important conversations in their own lives.
Wow.
I don't want you.
Can I just say
Yeah.
something about that? Because I think that is so interesting.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much, well, it's both. Having conversations with non-vegans who might be interested in what is this all about, but also because of your experience. And I think I know for me, it was a shock at how much hostility I got. People making fun of me, the constant jabs. I was, it's like being part of a political party that people don't like. Which is never a surprise to me, but it was becoming vegan. So then you also included in this, how can I help people like me to have meaningful conversations that can sometimes be contentious?
Well, that's it. And I feel like that's how it evolved. So I think what happened was that I saw that people were either, and when I say like Ann Light, and the way that I saw that reflected in other vegans as I got to know more vegan people, is they would say, for example, instead of saying I'm vegan, they'd say I'm plant-based, right? Because that's less incendiary. It's less likely to provoke a negative reaction from a non-vegan friend or family member. Or they would soften their message, what they really believe. They would soften what they actually believed, take those little edges off of it so that they can present themselves in a way that was more palatable. But so what I set out to do was learn myself, integrate all that background that I had, and support it with some new information, new studies, new research, and help people be their authentic selves. Don't dim it down, don't soften it, but still feel connected and compassionate and loving with the people in their lives. Mm-hmm. This is not about going out and saying, hey, this is me, screw you. It's not about that. I don't care what you think about it, because I absolutely do care what other people think. It's perfectly natural, and to want to be part of a community, to want to be part of our families, to want to be part of our survival depends on humans don't do well in isolation. We do well in community. So that's perfectly normal. So I really want to help vegans be able to not dim themselves down, to be able to have these important conversations, but still feel that compassion and connection with other people, even through disagreement and extreme disagreement about things where we feel passionate. You mentioned politics, like part of it. These are the topics that are, traditionally it's like you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about religion, right? That's like as the saying goes.
Sex, money, politics, and religion are the ones you don't talk about.
You don't talk about, right? And then with veganism, it's a little harder, because how do you not talk about food, which is present at every gathering, right?
Right.
But to me, what I decided for myself is that my relationships aren't authentic if I'm not allowed to talk about the things that are most important to me.
Yeah.
So instead of avoiding the topics that are most important to me and then keeping my relationships on some level, on some surfacey not deeply
Yes.
connected relationship, I'm going to find a way to be able to talk about these things, to be able to be a little uncomfortable sometimes, to feel awkward, but be okay with that. And also assist others in doing that, because when I engage in a conversation, that other person, might be struggling with that as well. So I try to cue them in to say, it's all right, it's okay. I'm uncomfortable too. We can handle it. I'm not here to judge or condemn you. I just want to hear where you're coming from. And then I want to share where I'm coming from.
So this may say more about me than you, but what has always struck me is how courageous it feels to me, how you are and how you invite us to be. When you said the people who, said, well, I'm plant-based. I've fallen into that trap. Well, that's a lot less, people don't object to that so much. Plant-based, okay. You still might get a few jibes, but when you use the word vegan, it really does.
It's charged.
Yeah, it charged. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've always experienced you and what you're doing as courageous, and it kind of makes me sit up straight. So I was going to ask you, just for those who haven't experienced it, what kind of activities you do, and then I have a few more questions like that. So what kind of activities do you engage in? Both.
Do you mean as part of my advocacy?
Post-COVID?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Pre-COVID, post-COVID.
So what I would do you mean with conversations with a friendly vegan,
Yeah.
like what kind of thing I do? So what I would do is pre-COVID, I would do tables at fairs, like you mentioned, the Peace Fair. I would go to various, and these were not vegan gathering, whatever, they weren't vegan things. I love to go to those, but I don't have tables at those, because really what I'm trying to do mostly is engage non-vegans in conversations when I do the tables. Whenever we are able to do tables again, I might also include vegan like veg fests and stuff like that, only to help other vegans address these issues. So yeah, that's kind of in the future. So I would do tables, and like you mentioned, it would just be me at a table with a sign that said, how about a conversation with a friendly vegan, and kind of inviting people. So there's no forcing, no pushing my agenda or anything. It's really just saying, hey, if you have questions, if you have thoughts on the subject, no pressure, just come on up, let's talk, So I do that. And then I will also have been invited to groups in person and now virtually to assist vegan people, where they can share, I can tell them, give them a little bit of instruction. There is an educational component to how to have these conversations, and then also practice them, like role play different situations. So pre-COVID, we did that in person, and then now I've been able to do it virtually, in large part because of vegan spirituality and that group, which I love so much. So it's been really great to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I also have a blog that I'm starting to contribute to more consistently, where I do it's taken a lot of attention in terms of researching, making sure that my studies that I'm basing this on are solid, good studies, and putting that together. So I've done a bit of writing, and
where could people find your blog?
It's conversationswithafriendlyvegan.com.
Great. Okay. And that's a website with a blog?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, but I'm looking at the time, and I have a couple of thoughts. But let me just say this one thing, and then I have an idea maybe for a part two.
Okay.
But if you allowed your imagination to go big,
yeah,
how would you see conversations in 5 years' time?
Well, I'll have a book.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yay.
so yeah, there will be a book, and there will be speaking engagements that I like doing some public speaking. I can also see people, I would like to do kind of train the trainer sessions
Yeah.
kind of things where other vegans who are interested in doing the work that I do, I could train them and then have this kind of spread out in that way throughout the vegan community around the world, around the country and the world. So that would be something that I would really like to see. Yeah.
That's a great, you have a vision. I
Yes.
wasn't sure, but you have a vision.
Yeah.
So what I was thinking about as we've been talking, and maybe as a part two, which I hadn't thought about before we started talking today, is that perhaps we could do a part two, either just you and me, or maybe would have one or two other people where we actually get to demonstrate what you do.
Sure, we could do the role plays. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm going to say to those who are viewing this to look out for a part two with Anne. And in that, what we'll do is have Anne talk to us the way she would normally if she's introducing these ideas to a new group of people. And then we'll have a role play with myself or with one or two other people. And I have always found it incredibly illuminating and helpful. And as you and I have talked, Anne, not just about veganism, but in our fraught political environment, to have a conversation with people, how do you stay connected when you feel so far apart? And it's just invaluable and not easy, I will say that.
It does take courage, because I think that it takes courage to put yourself in a position where you're feeling uncomfortable. So we have to, I do have, the role plays are a great demonstration. And we can talk about this in more detail in part two, but it does take a bit of inner work to get that courage, to muster that courage, to kind of build that solid foundation, to feel, we have our boundaries, right? So our boundaries shift as we evolve. And when you're a new vegan, a lot of times there's a fragility, there's like a little bit of a sense of what you can handle. And that's okay. That's part of it. But then there is a bit of inner work that can be done to kind of prepare yourself to be that, to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations and be okay with it. Because now, as time has gone on and I've given attention to this, when I hear those little pushback or dig, instead of getting that fear, I get an excitement. Because to me, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to have a conversation that's important to me, that I believe is important. So I no longer dread those interactions. I look forward to those interactions. So even when I think there might be a little bit of tension or it might be contentious, I can handle that. I can handle that. So I kind of look at it as like, yes, here we go.
So your confidence has blossomed, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the confidence just comes with paying attention to it and learning how to do it and being willing to put yourself out there and experience it.
And practicing. I think practicing. Yeah.
It's practicing. Yeah. I don't expect somebody who just went vegan yesterday to just go out there and it's not about like, oh, just be tougher, be strong. No, it's about learning and doing that work and getting to that point. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for making time this morning. And I look forward to sharing this with our broader audience and doing part two.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I loved it.